Hello, beautiful, and welcome to the Moms Talk Sex podcast with me, Mor Yelvington, your host. I'm so excited that you're here because this conversation is going to be very juicy. I have the beautiful Tanya here with me. Did I say that right?
It's Tenya.
Tanya. Okay. So, how about you introduce yourself and let us know a little bit about who you are and what you do?
My name is Tenya Eickenberg. I am an energy healer and a self-care coach. And I have been in this industry for probably about 4 years. And I got into it because I was looking for something to get rid of my anxiety and depression, which, if anybody knows, if you have either of those conditions for any length of time, what havoc it plays on your libido.
Yes. Oh my gosh, we're in the same field. I love that. And that's exactly the reason we're talking about these conversations because the minute you are so stuck in your head and out of your body, the libido goes out the door. I feel like that's one of the main things that we cut off as women. So, how did you get to being an energy healer and self care coach? What brought you to that?
So in 2018, life was absolutely wonderful on the outside. Our twins were graduating high school. We bought our forever home. We were moving. It was very quick. We moved in like 6 months from when they graduated high school. And we moved into a community that was right off the beach with wonderful people, one of them being my best friend. And it was going to be wonderful. We moved in the winter time. And if anybody knows winter at the beach in the north, you really can't sit out on the beach and enjoy the weather because it's cold. And so we were inside a lot. And, by probably February or March of 2019, my anxiety and depression were like, hey, you don't have kids to raise anymore. Yeah, you have a full-time job. Yeah, you have a husband, but you know what? It's time for you to pay attention to us,
Hmm.
because if you don't start paying attention to us, we are going to create so much havoc in your life that you're just going to spiral.
Hmm.
And I pushed it away for a couple of months. I pushed it away for probably about 6 months, and into the winter and I started drinking again. I started smoking. That was my way of dealing with it. And then in winter of 2020, I had a very stressful conversation with my mom, and it got to the point where I was either going to run my vehicle into a telephone pole or I needed to get help.
Yeah.
And all of this stuff was also impacting my relationship from my perspective with my husband. Like I love my husband. We've been married for 28 years. We have, three beautiful children. And, I he loves me. He's affectionate, he's attracted to me. And I found that even though he was attracted to me, I was not attracted to myself.
Yeah.
And I would have we would have intimate relations, and I wasn't really there.
Hmm.
And um we had to bring in more things into our bedroom for me to orgasm. And it really played with my head. It was like, why am I not good enough to just do this without assistance?
Yeah.
And so that played into that depression and anxiety as well, because it was like it played into
Yeah.
so much played into those feelings. And it was my own doing. It wasn't anybody else. It wasn't my husband saying, oh, well, I don't want to bring this stuff into the house. It wasn't any of that.
Yeah.
It was everything that was in my own head. And so I went the traditional routes at first, because that's all I knew at the time. Was I called and this was right when COVID shut down. So
Wow.
I had to go to doctors that I had no relationship with and be comfortable with sharing my most deepest
Yeah.
fears and sadness and worry and all this stuff. And of course, I kept a lot of it back because I didn't trust them. I didn't know them.
Yeah.
6 to 8 weeks after getting on the medication and going to talk therapy, I realized this just is not working again. You know, this
Yeah.
was like, I think the third or fourth time that I had gone through this rotation. And I was just like, this just isn't going to work. And so I did a Google search for holistic emotional healing. And this modality called the emotion code popped up.
Mm.
And I had never heard of it. And it was the process of releasing trapped emotions by swiping a magnet over the top of your head.
Oh.
And I was like, okay, all right, well, what do I have to lose? I'm not ingesting anything. So I wasn't really scared that it would hurt me. But nothing else was working. And what did I have to lose? Because it was either I needed to try this or, you know, admit myself for inpatient care. That's how bad I felt inside. And through all of this, my husband didn't realize I was feeling this way. My kids didn't realize I was feeling this way. I
Wow.
had imposter syndrome so bad. I pretended to be happy. I pretended to be fine. I was like, fake it till you make it.
Wow. That is so intense, living
It
that
was.
duality and then trying to also keep it all together.
Yeah, it was. And um within 4 months of learning, yeah, so I did a couple sessions. I decided to get my certification in it because I felt wonderful after a couple of sessions. And so I decided to get my certification in it to help myself
Yeah.
and to help my family. And within 4 months, I felt about 80% healed.
Wow.
And that's when I started introducing self-care, meditation, journaling, reading uplifting books, cutting out the news, learning to set boundaries. There's so much that I did within a 2-month period. But within 6 months of learning what energy healing was, how to do it for myself, I was 100% healed from the anxiety and depression.
Amazing.
And then I got to just start working on all the other little things. And one of those was my libido.
Yeah.
And what was blocking my libido from being where it was when I was in my 20s.
Wow.
I don't believe we have to be stuck
No.
in the ages that everybody that we are, right? All of these things that happen when you're in your 40s. I don't believe that we have to be stuck in those beliefs. We have to be stuck in those truths. And so I started working on those.
What would you say was the main three that you had to, the main three beliefs that you had to kind of let go of and shift?
Oh gosh. Uh Probably I have to be willing to take my time,
Yeah.
because as we all know, men have no problem with coming to orgasm within minutes.
Yeah.
Women, it takes a little longer. Women need um, support, and they need to be nurtured and seduced.
Right.
And in my head, if I wasn't done within a certain amount of time, I started getting to my own head like, oh my gosh, am I taking too long? You know, is he getting tired? All that kind of stuff kind of goes through your head. And it's like I had to clear some of those things out and be like, you know what? I'm not him. I have to be okay with it taking more time than him. And I need to be in the moment. And so I cleared a lot of stuff around being in the moment, which helped with other stuff. But it helped with us in the bedroom because I could pay attention to more of those sensations that were coming through instead of just listening to my head going, oh gosh, it's taken 10 minutes already and it hasn't hit yet. Like what is wrong? And then you're
It's
wondering, oh,
amazing.
yeah, and then you're wondering if does he think he's doing something wrong?
Right.
And for a long time, after we were done, I'm like, he wouldn't say anything. I'm sorry it took so long. He's like, oh, it's okay. I'm like, just so you know, it's not you. Like, it's totally not you.
Wow.
Because I didn't want him to think he was doing anything wrong. So that
Yeah.
was that was being in the moment, um, feeling comfortable in my naked body. 48 years old after having 3 kids, 60 pounds overweight, being comfortable in my body and seeing it from his perspective.
I
Um,
love that.
yeah, if you can have those conversations with your partner, like, what do you love about my body? And of course, they're going to joke at first, or like, oh, I like your boobs and your butt.
Right.
But it's like, no, really, what do you find sexy about my body? And try to get them to give you a few little tidbits and look at yourself in the mirror and try to see yourself from their perspective.
Yeah. I love that you're sharing this because I feel like so many people, women, they feel like it's some kind of race, right? Who can come first?
Right.
And I think there's so much pleasure that we can experience in the actual race, not in the
Yeah.
actual finish line. I mean,
Yeah.
of course, the finish line is amazing and climaxing and orgasming, but sometimes we so focus on, am I going to come? Am I not going to come? How long is it going
Right.
to take me to come? That we miss out on everything that builds up to actually get us to that point.
Yeah.
And so I love that you can pinpoint that by sharing what you're sharing because it really puts a light on that. What if you stepped out of that and actually into the sensations of what your body is feeling
Yeah.
and out of that headspace? So, what is something that you do now that can get you out of that headspace?
I breathe. And I also tell my husband what it is that I would like. If I notice that the previous session that I was more in my head, when we're all done, or before the next session, in between sessions, I will tell him, hey, can maybe we flirt a little bit more throughout the day? Because for me, it's the workup,
Yeah, I
the
love that.
workup that gets me going. It's the flirting, it's the seduction. And when we have those moments when it feels like wham bam, thank you, ma'am, those are when I get more in my head
Hmm.
because there hasn't been a rev up. No one started my engine.
Yeah,
And if I need to start my own engine, then that's fine. I'll start
yeah,
my own engine, but I would prefer he started my engine.
exactly. If I start my own engine, I can also finish the job.
Right, exactly. And
Right,
and and I enjoy love making with my husband so much, and you don't hear that often either.
right,
Um, a lot of women claim that they don't enjoy having sex. They don't want to have sex with their partner. They don't want to take the time for it.
right.
And there was a time when I did struggle with that, and and I would participate in the intimacy, even if I didn't really want to. And it wasn't he
Mhm.
wasn't he wasn't pressuring me. It
Right,
wasn't anything like that. It was just, I'm a strong believer in cultivating my relationship with my husband, because when my kids leave, he's the one who's going to be there.
right. Yes.
My kids, we have kids so that we can raise them and send them off on their ways in hopes that, hey, they remember us when they have holidays and grandkids and all that stuff. But the
Right.
reason for having kids is to, and this may sound cold, but it's to keep the population going.
Yeah.
That's the main reason why we have kids, is so we can keep our generations going.
Right.
And you know, but in the end, I don't want to be alone when my kids leave either. And
Yeah.
I don't want my kids to think they have to take care of me when they have their own lives, when they start having their kids. They're gonna have way too much to focus on.
Yeah.
They don't need to focus on us. I'm not even sure where I was going with all of that, but
I
I
think it's just part of it's part of the transition that we're going through as women, as moms,
yeah,
and everything that happens in life. And really noticing that I think that the minute we have kids, we put all the energy on the kids. And so that's where so many marriages end up in divorce because we
mhm,
don't realize, we forget, we're so caught in the moment that at the end of the day, this is the person you're going to be with when they all leave the house. This
Yeah.
is the person, that you're going to have to create a life after they move on. And
Yeah.
so we put the marriage on the back burner, we put the sex on the back burner, we put the intimacy, because it's really intimacy, right? That we're
It
after.
is.
It's not really about, I mean, yeah, sometimes it's great just to have awesome, you know, 2 minute sex just to get the engine,
Yep.
like you said. But
Absolutely.
most of the times we want that. And so when we put that on a back burner, we don't realize how much of us we're putting on a back burner. We don't realize how much of us we're disconnected from. We feel
Yeah.
like it's all him, but no, it's a big part of you too. And that part is also the self care that you're
Yep.
missing a lot.
It is.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
what
Sex
was
is
giving you the
self-care.
permission to step back into that, right? Because it's almost like you kind of disconnected from it, from your story, and that's where all the anxiety, depression came from. And so it was almost like when you chose the self-care, when you chose to work on yourself, everything shifted and actually you were able to let go of it and heal it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I wasn't a big self-care advocate
Yeah.
until my kids moved out. And I look back and there were times when like I would, I joined a gym and I took the kids to the gym and they had to go into the gym daycare and they didn't want to go. And I'm like, no, you guys need to go in there because mommy needs this time so that she can be better for you. And so
Yeah.
I had little glimpses of what I was supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
And then something would come along and derail me, and I would let it derail me. And I would go off in another direction and I would stop doing that self care. And when I looked back, I was like, my gosh, when I really did pay attention to what it was that I needed, not on a selfish level. And eventually I'll get to the point where I stop saying that.
Yeah. Because it's such a lie, the biggest lie, right? To
It is,
tell
it
you
is
from
because
us.
we are taking care of ourselves is not selfish.
Right. It's
But
number one.
exactly, we are our first job.
Yes.
When we come into this world, we are our first job.
Yes.
However, generation after generation after generation, we are constantly told that we need to take care of others. Think about this when you first have when you have your first baby and it's 2 o'clock in the morning and you are so tired and your baby's crying and you're just like, please go to sleep for mommy. That's when we start training our kids to do for us, to do
Yeah.
for others. And it sounds so minuscule, but you're saying that 2 or 3 times a night, a few times a week, you're starting to we're starting to train our kids to take care of others.
Yeah.
And I don't want to put anybody down because I mean I was there.
Yeah.
I can remember telling my kids the same thing my mom used to tell me. Hey, don't worry, don't be careful. You're gonna have to take care of me when I'm older. You're gonna have to change my diapers. I don't say
Right.
that anymore. But getting back to the intimacy, sexual relations with your partner, with somebody that you care about, with yourself, or if you just want to go out and have fun, it is self-care.
Yes.
And
100%.
you do need to vocalize what it is you want in that sexual session.
Yeah. And to me, it's a really good indicator. If you're noticing that your libido is really low, it's the last thing on your mind. You try to avoid it in all costs.
Yep.
Those would be signs I would look for. Okay, where am I not taking care of me here? Because this is how it's coming to fruition. I can
Yeah,
put it on my husband, but really it's me. And so
it
if
all starts with
you're
us,
listening
doesn't
and
it?
you're dealing with that, just pay
Yeah,
attention to those behaviors and those tendencies that will that will like light bulb you to be like, okay, there's something here I need to look at. You don't
yeah,
want
and
to go down all the way to depression, to anxiety. These could be
no,
very good indicators on the way to that, to wake up,
yes,
a wake up call.
yes, and a lot of things that are going to affect your libido that you really need to look at is, are you getting enough sleep?
Yeah.
How are you managing your stress? Have you healed from past emotional trauma? Was there something that happened in your childhood, or your teen years that is affecting you wanting to have sex. And if there's those things, make sure that you're going and talking to a professional, a therapist, an energy healer, a medical practitioner. There are so many different ways to come at childhood trauma when it comes to how it's affecting your sex life.
Yes. And mainly, I help women mainly with sexual trauma. And what I've known is that most women aren't even aware they experience sexual trauma. They're not
Yeah,
even
because
aware of it. And so the
right.
main indicators are the anxiety, the depression, the
Yep.
low libido. They're the indicators that
Yes.
something is there that you haven't dealt and helped and held and
Yes.
healed.
Yep. Yep.
So
I have
if
noticed. Yeah, I've noticed that most women don't have very many memories before the age of 7 or 8.
yeah,
And typically those are though before age 7 is typically when sexual abuse usually starts.
right,
And if it doesn't go beyond 7 or 8, then, thank God. But you're probably not going to remember it unless it was an ongoing thing. It
right.
only takes once to cause emotional trauma.
Exactly. And like I say with my clients, it doesn't even have to be the act. You could have been exposed to something that
Yep.
really traumatized you. You could
Yep.
have been said something that really shocked you. Somebody could have looked at you in a way that made you feel very vulnerable. Your body reacts the same a lot of
Yep.
times. It
Yep.
doesn't know any different.
Yep. Or yeah,
So,
absolutely.
yeah. So if our listeners want to know more about you and reach you and talk to you, how can they find you?
You can find me at my website, designyourexistence.com. Facebook and Instagram is also at Design Your Existence.
I
Oh,
love
I
that.
have a
Design your
podcast.
existence.
I
That is
have a
awesome.
podcast, the Metamorphosis Project podcast.
Oh, I love that.
Yep.
That's
Yep. It's a
beautiful.
podcast. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for being here with me today. I really appreciate you and all your knowledge and energy that you've shared with us. If you guys are listening and you want more support, feel free to reach out. We're here for you. This is our life mission to
Yeah.
really help you step into who you came here to be. So don't let anything stopping you from having that amazing orgasm. Have
Yep.
a beautiful rest of your day, and we'll tune in next week.